Alex, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, my friend. It's great to be here.
So we have just watched as the Republicans finally had the ability to rein in Trump in Congress with this unpopular war, something that's been weighing not just Trump's approval ratings down, but the rest of the party's approval ratings down with this war powers resolution. And instead of using their own autonomy to rein him in, they decided to give him control and block this vote. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are as we watch the Republicans kind of say, you know what, we could have used our authority to rein Trump in, but instead we decided to give him full rein here. And so we own this as much as he does.
I gotta say, the gelding, that's the term I've been using, the castration of Republican power really, to me, reached its apex in and around this, because this is also the same week that the Cook Political Report moved 4 key Senate races towards the Democratic side of the ledger. And you could argue that the only reason Republicans pledge undying fealty and loyalty to Donald Trump is because they're concerned that he's the reason they remain in power. But literally everything Trump is doing right now is endangering their prospects of getting reelected, to say nothing of control of Congress, right? Like, if you see, I mean, forget about the moral question, right? Like, should we even be engaged in slaughtering thousands of Iranians and Lebanese? Like, should we be doing this all in America's name with no particular achievements viable at the end of all of this? Tactically and strategically, the gas prices that are not going to come down for at least several weeks, if not months, the energy shortages, the fuel shortages that are affecting almost every sector of the global economy, all this is not good news for any Republican strategically. They were given an opportunity to say, no, we don't agree with this, and they didn't take it. Like, to me, that distills the essence of the modern day Republican Party. It's not simply the naked pursuit of power. It's a cowardice that knows no basement, right? Like, they are so terrified of him that they'll cede not only their independent governing authority, they will cede their election prospects and the ability to remain in power just so that Trump doesn't get mad at them. That is some wild shit, Brian.
It is, and the part that doesn't make sense to me is like, okay, and you had just alluded to this, was the reason that they're so eager to hug him is because they don't want, a mean tweet, God forbid, or a primary challenger, God forbid, to emerge from his ire. But if hugging Trump in and of itself is what's dragging them down,
yes,
then like, what is the rationale for continuing to do it?
I don't know. I mean, I think I actually keep meaning to look this up, but like, when is the last Republican primary for 2028? Because I guess the thinking is they got to get through primary season. And once they do that, maybe they can have they can establish a little bit more daylight between them and the executive branch. But I'm like, don't hold your breath on that.
Right. And it's also so transparent what they would be trying to do. Okay, so you get through the entire primary process where you become the general election nominee, and only then do you suddenly realize that, hey, maybe the war that I helped greenlight wasn't a good idea. Maybe the gas prices that surged as the result of me contracting every ounce of my autonomy over to Trump isn't a good idea. I mean, like, everything you can trace back to their own unwillingness to speak up when they actually had the opportunity to do so.
Totally. I mean, I think that they think they're good. Like, I will say they have managed to wipe their hands of any of the or they have tried to wipe their hands and wipe their feet, as it were, of any of the most negative, stinky shit that the Trump administration has thrown at the American public. I don't think they can do this on the war in Iran. I really don't. And I mean that because, again, I'm not a CNBC analyst and I don't follow the market, nor am I a petroleum engineer. But it seems to me that the effects of this war are going to be long lasting. And the ultimate idiocy with which Trump has conducted himself, we're going to end up with a harder line regime in place than there was at the beginning. Iran is going to retain some control of a body of water that it had no claim to before the start of this war. And in the meantime, the Philippines is on a 4-day work week. Like, jet fuel prices are rising. Gas is going to be over $4 a barrel or a gallon for the next, at least into Memorial Day. Like, those are tangible effects of this that the American public is not, I think, easily going to forget, in addition to the moral stain. I mean, I just go back to the bombing of that girls' school and like, God, I hope when Congress gets its balls back, we can have some real investigation into the war crimes perpetrated in our name by Hegseth and his minions.
On that point, do you think that Democrats have a willingness to do that? And I ask because, first of all, we saw Biden come into office kind of with this idea that his presidency would be a return to normalcy. And it was enough to get him elected, but clearly not enough to keep him in office. I mean, that gave rise to Trump 2.0, which was even more lawless than before. And I think a lot of that lawlessness was born out of the fact that there were no repercussions for anything that these Republicans had done. I mean, even Trump himself, for inciting an insurrection, Merrick Garland wasn't even willing to look into that for 2 years, and only then did he deign to appoint a special counsel, at which point Trump had enough time to kind of wriggle out of any charges, because there was just enough delay tactics to get him to the presidency.
Yeah, well, and announced he was running for office again. So it became impossible to actually really fall. Anyway, but look, I think we have seen, for one, I think the government shutdowns are indicative of a party that's like, we're going to use every lever we have to stand on principle. And so far, those two principles are real ones, right? The cost of healthcare, which affects the cost of Obamacare. I know you cover this. Like, 23 million Americans know what it's like to have have healthcare costs skyrocket. I interviewed someone on my show whose healthcare costs were going from $100 a month to $860 a month. I mean, that's just not tenable.
Wild. Yeah.
Right? Wild fluctuations, right? And then the other piece was ICE. I do think we talk about signal moments in administrations. And at the same time, we also talk about the way in which there's so many controversies and there's so many bad sagas in the Trump years that it becomes, blurred together. But I do think the murder of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good sticks in the mind of people. And the fact that Democrats took a stand and said, we are not going to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which remains unfunded, until we see some significant, meaningful reforms to ICE. That's the American public. We all lived through that moment. And we all saw the senseless killing of Americans on the streets by a group of militarized, ICE goons and CPB goons. That's going to come back up. They may have figured out a way to make these arrests and deportations less public, but there is still horrible stuff happening in these detention centers. ICE is still doing something very wicked